Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome back to another best of 5 series of professional StarCraft 2. Now, what I got for you today is a Zerg versus Protoss between two of the very best players over here in Europe. Spawning in the bottom left hand corner of Lost and Found LE. In game number 1 of this series and playing with the red Protoss probes. He's from France and he goes by the nickname of PtitDrogo. And his opponent spawning in the top right hand corner of the map. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that I'm a bit of a fanboy of this dude right here. He's considered to be one of the strongest StarCraft 2 players right now already, at only age 16, and I know I repeat that every single time as well, but it's just simply so impressive. He's from Italy, and he goes by the nickname of Raynor. On Overlord, which is a statistics website for StarCraft 2, Raynor is actually currently ranked as the number 2 non-Korean StarCraft 2 player, which is really quite impressive. Obviously at rank 1 we have none other than Serral. Serral is just a little bit better, but actually recently Raynor went up against Serral in the grand finals of WCS Montreal, and it was an extremely close series. Considering Raynor is still very much so up and coming and he seems to be getting better all the time, I would not be surprised if Raynor takes home a WCS series sometime next year. And it's actually kind of interesting as well because he's only participated in 2. In 2018 there were 4 WCS circuit events, and basically winning one of them would qualify you for BlizzCon. The reason why Raynor did not participate in the first 2 is just because of his age. You need to be at least 16 years old to be participating in the official WCS events from Blizzard directly, and he just simply was too young to participate, which is one of the craziest reasons not to qualify for an event when you think about it. Apparently, actually, I didn't know about this until recently, he also holds the world record of youngest player ever to get into Grandmaster League. Apparently at age 12 and like 30 days. It's kind of crazy. I was just playing RuneScape, man, when I was age 12. Oh well, a 99 fire making wasn't gonna get itself, you know. I had to grind for that as well. At the very least I tried. Anyways, PtitDrogo, of course, I'm talking a lot about Raynor here, but PtitDrogo, definitely a really strong Protoss player as well. I remember back in, I believe 2016, he won a DreamHack Open, which was really, really impressive. And he's always been one of the top level contenders over in Europe. Now, judging by the build order so far of both players, it looks very, very standard. Obviously, we see that Stargate right here for Drogo. It's very common for Protoss players to go for that Stargate, just because it doesn't just allow you to put some pressure on the Zerg player, but it also allows you to shoo away Overlords, prevent scouting, and then use the Oracle not only for harassment, but also to defend your third base. So Stargate Opener is definitely the gold standard in the Zerg versus Protoss matchup, and while you do have some variety, there's no denying that, you know, the Adept into a Phoenix and then also eventually an Oracle is just really, really strong, just for map control and just general pressure on the Zerg player while expanding simultaneously. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something along those lines here in just a little bit. We do see that second Adept now joining the first one. Raynor, though, did already make himself a group of Zerglings. He's got 6 Lings right here as well as a bunch of Queens. I don't think they're really going to be able to deal all too much damage, and already the Shade once again is going backwards. But the third base has now been confirmed. Now, Zerg versus Protoss usually is a matchup where Zerg tries to go up to 80 to 90 or so drones as quickly as possible. Basically, the goal for a player like Raynor, who loves his mid-game Zergling run-bys, is to just simply try and get himself 80 drones as quickly as possible without dying in the process. And once he reaches that, he can really start piling on the pressure with massive amounts of units. He can really start swarming the map. Now, it is very much so up to the Protoss player to try and slow down that economy from Zerg. They can do so in several different ways. Obviously, for example, this switch right here from Drogo, which seems to be a switch into Archon drops, is a great way to just simply force the Zerg player to make at least a couple of units and just make it a little bit trickier to go up to that heavy drone count. So far though, Raynor has really done the bare necessities to hold on. He made only a handful of Zerglings, didn't really focus on a whole lot more ever since. He did go for a rather quick lair, so already we do see that Hydralisk Den now coming up. But he only really made a couple of Queens, and that's about it, right? A couple of Queens, a couple of Zerglings, and other than that, just Overlords and drones. So already he's got a very healthy economy. But now that the third base is really up and running, this is when Zerg can really start piling on the pressure. Now, I say that, right? But judging by this... Okay, I was gonna say, judging by the timing on that Hydra Den, he could also opt to go for some more aggressive plays, but he did decide to go for 9 additional drones. So I think that Raynor is just simply getting that Hydra Den really quickly to start working on those upgrades. Drogo, though, treating game number 1 of this series as the game of macro. I think that's usually the correct call to make. Some players like cheesing early on in series. Both of these players don't really cheese very much in general. Oh, nice little catch there, actually. The Oracle is going to make this just a little bit harder, but we do see those Archons now coming up here for Drogo. And this is a great composition to just simply juggle around. If you manage to get some damage done with the Warp Prism, and obviously with the Archons inside of the Warp Prism, you're not only dealing damage to the Zerg, but you're also really preventing the Zerg from ever moving out. And that's the tricky part, because you know if you move out as a Zerg player in this scenario, the Warp Prism is going to come in and it's going to try and deal some damage to you, and it's going to really hurt really easily. Now, the Hydras are already out. This is rather uncommon, but here are the Zealots. Drogo did invest in a couple of additional gateways. This is a relatively common follow-up these days, but already, though, we see an awful lot of units here for Raynor. The question is there going to be enough right now for this Zerg player to hold on? So far, solid micro, though, by Zerg, really preventing a lot of those Zealots from dealing critical amounts of damage. But with, of course, that third Nexus coming up, this is by no means an all-in here for Drogo. This is one of those builds, though, where you can very easily lose if you're a Zerg player and you don't pay very, very close attention. More and more Archons coming up. Look at that. Drogo may actually just decide to continue the aggression for a little while longer. Raynor did stop droning here for a little while already. Really nice senses actually there by him. It's very common for Zerg players to hold a push like that initially and then to go back to workers. But instead, he's been making non-stop army here for a little while. Drogo, though, going on to the creep. Bringing with him a couple of additional Zealots here as well. And obviously, right, he can always go ahead and mass recall. I love this play because he's still adding on an awful lot of probes as well. Well, here go the Zealots. They're charging forward on top of a couple of those Banelings. Banelings connecting with Archons, not really what you want. Beautiful juggling here as well by the man from France. Getting a lot of value, actually, out of just a relatively small army. Those Archons bringing so much damage with them as well. But I think there's just a little bit too many Hydras. 2 of the Archons will be evacuated on out of there. The third one, well, it may just be able to walk off of the creep here eventually, but no, it will not be able to escape. Raynor manages to deflect that army, but while this was all going on, right, Drogo was busy just simply building probes for that third Nexus. Lovely play here by the French Protoss. Really getting a lot of economy and almost mirroring the eco right now of Zerg, which is not really a situation that you ever want to be in if you are a Zerg player. Now, he doesn't have any splash damage, and that's the only thing I'm a little worried for. He did not really have the gas here available to go for a Psionic Storm. So it's really going to be Zealots and Archons for now, which is very, very strong. But with proper Baneling connections, the Banelings can make short work of a lot of those units very, very easily. Hydra range, though, not started until just now. Raynor actually slipping that one up here in just a little bit. Don't know if that's intentional, but not having Hydra range definitely can hurt in this kind of scenario. It all comes down to the Baneling connects. Couple of Zerglings trying to be a nuisance, pulling some of that Protoss army once again apart. Banelings trying to get the connection. So far, not really looking for it. Oh my god, that was a massive hit, though. The majority of the Zealots there will get cleaned up. Couple of Zerglings are trying to go to town there on the probes at the third base, but Drogo seems to easily hold on, and he's now even chasing down a Zerg player. Warp Prism taking a little bit of damage there once more, but the links have been deflected. The shield battery is really providing a lot of value here. Drogo ended up losing 2 probes there only. No, actually, he killed... Wait, hold up. Raynor killed no workers there at all? Yeah, those 2 worker kills were actually from Drogo. Huh. That's actually pretty sick. All right. Well, apparently this will now allow our French Protoss to go ahead and take a 4th Nexus as well. I would love him to start transitioning right now into more of a splash damage army composition, though. You kind of need it, right? He's warping in a lot of High Templar. I need him to start up the Templar Archives upgrade here as well, though, in just a second. Because at this point, he really doesn't have any source of splash, which is just a little bit risky if you're going up against this really big Zerg-based army. There we go. Psionic Storm does get started up. It won't be done for another little while, but I don't think Raynor really plans on being any more aggressive than he has already been in this series so far. Instead, he's now finally gonna start building some workers once again. I have to hand it here to Drogo, though. definitely at an advantage at this point in the game. Even though the supply is in favor here of Zerg, Zerg is not really getting anything done whatsoever. If he could force a council though on that Nexus, that would be a big deal. Right, but so far, nah. No real damage has been done by Zerg, and Zerg purposefully slowed down his own economy there for quite a long time just to deal some damage to Protoss that never really was dealt. Alrighty, so where is this gonna go now? I think what Drogo is looking for is to go for this really powerful mid-game push with Archon, Immortal, Psionic Storm, as well as Zealots. It's one of the most powerful composition. Zerg, though, while pushing right here with Hydraling Bane, is now starting up to transition towards a Hive as well as a Spire. So I think we're going to be seeing greater Spire here in just a little bit. A couple of Zealots actually trying to sacrifice themselves, remove some of those, some of these Archons, or rather some of these Banelings out of the game. Once again, the Zealots get picked off here on the right-hand side of the screen all the time, but I wonder how this is going to go. We do see a really big army here for Zerg, but Drogo has already split up some of his units as well. Now, Banelings are going to move forward here, though, on the left-hand side. The Archons actually just moved away. Storm is done. Beautiful Storm there. Will prevent a lot of those units from taking damage, too. Banelings still trying to connect. 5 probes there do end up going down, but at the same time, the Zealot holding that wall fell as well. Mass recall forced into the main base here of Protoss, and this is what Raynor does so very well. He does this better than any other Zerg player on the planet right now. I don't think Cyril does it even as well as he does. He gets units inside of his opponent's bases. That's 14 probes. You blink twice, 18 workers die. Right? That was sick. Honestly, that was a very substantial amount of damage that was just dealt. And right now, since the Archons and the Immortals can't fit out, even the Cybernetics core has to be destroyed. And now Raynor, right, with that Greater Spire coming up, he's going to be able to not only just force this Protoss player to stay home with all of these attacks he's doing, but he's also going to be able to start up that transition towards Brute Lords, and there's no counter here available for Drogo whatsoever. It looked absolutely phenomenal for Drogo here earlier. Right now, though, he's in a little bit of trouble still. Zerg has to be careful. You can't just sacrifice his entire army and then not die to the counterattack. Drogo does still have a massive force, actually setting up that Protoss sandwich. A lot of Archons remain, right? Once again, 10 probes there were killed, but there's a really strong Protoss army now on the prowl. Corruptors are being made, but Raynor threw away the majority of his units. Some Hydras here will be able to kill that 4th Nexus, but I don't think Drogo cares. Drogo is forced into an all-in position, and he's in a wonderful spot as far as his army goes. Couple of Zealots cleaning up that 5th hatchery there of Zerg. Corruptors will be spotted right now as well, so Drogo recognizes the timer that he's on. Greater Spire will finish up in just a little bit, and while there's no proper counter here available for Brute Lords whatsoever, I think that Drogo might just be able to deal crippling amounts of damage while this is all going on. Hydras and Lings though, rather than engaging the army, they're gonna go for the counter attack instead. Natural as well as the 4th base of Raynor have already fallen. Brute Lords are coming up. That's 5 brutes there in total, as well as a lot of Zerglings. Hydras will eventually be warded away, and Drogo still sitting on 3 bases. He's going for Blink right now, as well as additional ground weapon upgrades, but here are the Brute Lords. Obviously, there is Storm available, as well as a lot of these Archons as well. Storm dealing a huge amount of damage. Drogo might just be able to get underneath those beautiful... Oh my god, that was beautiful. He managed to get underneath those Brute Lords, and now the Greater Spire units will be picked off with a couple High Templars and a handful of Archons. Drogo is the one who wins game number 1. You know what that reminds me of? I don't know how many of you used to watch a lot of StarCraft 2 when Legacy of the Void first came out, but a lot of Protoss players liked going for Adept all-ins. Since the Adept was a unit that no one really knew how to counter initially, because it moved around like a lot of other RTS units didn't do, right? It was just a little bit strange. Zerg players took a really long time adjusting to 8-gate Adept openers. However, when Zerg players finally figured out how they needed to go ahead and time their Roach Warren and how many units they needed to properly counter the Adept all-ins, Protoss players started throwing away a lot of Adepts. They really didn't deal a lot of damage. Zerg would kill all of the Adepts and then just counterattack, and Protoss would die. That's kind of what it felt like in that previous game as well. Raynor did a crippling amount of damage to his opponent's economy, but he didn't really kill any of the army whatsoever. And while he did have a counter coming up for that army eventually, Drogo just simply boxed all of his units together and went across the map. Sometimes you get carried away trying to slow down your opponent's economy that you don't really have an army to back up into, right? And that was the risky part there. Drogo showing us that his game senses are sharp. Obviously, for us, it's easy to look at the game and have the full information available. But Drogo's senses are looking sharp. He knows exactly the situation that he was in. He was like, wait a second, sure. You just killed like 20 of my probes, but you also gave away a ton of your army in the process. And then he set up that sandwich with the Archons at the 3rd base. Beautiful move there by the French Protoss. Really well done. Now, Raynor doesn't really strike me as a player who's ever really faced. When you see him play, he does seem very focused in the games, but as soon as the games are over, he may look sad for like 2 seconds, but then he's smiling again. I think that's one of Raynor's strong points as well. He doesn't seem to be too emotionally invested into single games. You gotta obviously treat these kind of games like a series, right? Winning one map, it's only one map. There's a lot of room here for players to adjust and obviously to try out the different strategies. Raynor likely not too phased. I would imagine he's just gonna simply play the style that he's most comfortable with. Now, Drogo knows, obviously, that Raynor is a strong Zerg player. On paper, Raynor should outclass Drogo here. I have obviously no idea who ends up winning this series, but I think on paper, Raynor should be higher ranked here than Drogo. But Drogo, just simply once again going into that Stargate, I can imagine this must at the very least give him a little bit of confidence. I'm curious about that lair timing actually from Raynor. Normally, we see Zerg players going for like a 4-minute lair as well as a 4-minute roach warren, something along those lines, when they go up against Archon drops, in particular when they scout there's some sort of zealot follow-up. Raynor, though, decided to go for like, I think that was like a 3:30 or so lair? Not entirely sure. I'm not sure if he's going to be doing something similar once again. We don't really see those kind of builds very often. One adept here trying to be a nuisance. Eventually, though, the spores will be created. No drone casualties here whatsoever, but while it was going on, Zerglings made their way to the other side of the map, and they will be able to scout out everything that this Protoss player has. One adept now with the task to kill 4 Zerglings. There we go. It will fulfill its duties, and I think it's going to head back to that wall as well to defend for a little while longer. This time around, we don't see a similar build here from Raynor. Leaving only a single drone in gas, very, very common. He's going to be able to mine a little bit more of those resources, but I think he's going to be playing something a little bit more standard here. If this is once again going to be Archon drops, the Hydras are going to be much later. So if Raynor means to defend against those units once again, there we go. With the Archon, or with the Hydralisk rather, if he means to defend the Archon drops with Hydralisk, I think he's going to be in a little bit of trouble. Wouldn't be surprised if he starts up the lair and then maybe the Roach Warren here in just a little bit. Raynor is also one of the players who really popularized, the +1 melee upgrades for Zerg. So he goes for +1 melee really early on. Still just simply sitting on just drones though. Just drones and queens. That's all he's making so far. There's no Spore Crawler in the Natural actually. And while there are 3 queens available, eventually they should be able to ward away some of these units. Still 2 drones there end up going down. Lair eventually does start, but already additional gateways are being produced. Templar Archives now also here coming up for Drogo, so he's going to be able to go for that Archon drop pressure once again. And I guess Zerg is going to plan on holding on to this aggression with just Zerglings and queens? I'm starting to get a little bit worried here for Raynor. He does eventually start up that Roach Warren. It's very late though. Roach Warren doesn't start until about the 5-minute mark. And already the Warp Prism is moving across. Zerg does not know about this push whatsoever. He does start up a couple Zerglings. Maybe I'm kind of overthinking this though, but I've personally, right, on the ladder, lost 1,000 times to these builds before. Drogo is a very, very strong Protoss player. These roaches should not be done by the time that these Archons arrive. Lynx are currently scouting around for it though. I guess Raynor only really needs to buy a little bit of time to defend against those Prism drops. But this is still gonna hurt quite a bit. Well, 8 roaches do start up right now. I guess queens will be able to ward this away, right? Yeah, Raynor really showing us that he's willing to risk it just a little bit to get out just a couple more drones. So he's sitting at 58 workers right now, which is really quite impressive. Well, the Prism actually has been warded away really far. These queens dealing a lot of damage to it. Ooh, I think Archons, yeah, one Archon there will, oh my god, he's gonna recall it? Oh, is he gonna get, yeah, he will. Nice. Beautiful move there, actually, by Drogo, but I'm really quite impressed there with the way that Raynor was handling that. I just want to point out, right, the Archons were already morphing in when the Roach Warren wasn't done or it wasn't done building yet. That's extremely risky, very difficult to pull off, and Raynor right now in a phenomenal spot to just simply continue building those workers. And I think this is Raynor's happy place. He's gonna go for the 4th base, he's gonna go for the Hydra Den. He could be going for Hydraling Bane once again. He could also transition into Lurkers instead. Additional roaches though are coming up, but Raynor now going for that 4th hatchery, right? He's got himself a really solid economy. 3 bases fully saturated, whereas in comparison to the previous game, Drogo is lacking behind a little in that department. Cool play. I like this a lot. Well, still the Archons though. Oh, that pickup micro. Beautiful play there by our Protoss player as well. Just picking off whatever he can, but he definitely did not slow down this Zerg player as much as he did in game number 1. You notice the differences here? It's so minor, right? It's not a very big difference whatsoever. It's just all these little things that add up so quickly. Personally, when I play Protoss, I am always worried whenever Zerg seems to have this really big economy, because it kind of feels that they can do whatever they like. And it's what makes Zerg so very strong. If your micro is not 100% on point, it can deal a lot of damage. Well, this could be bad. Oh my god. The prism there goes down, and that's what I mean, right? The prism there goes down, the Archons obviously fall, and this now allows Raynor to just simply continue onwards with the drones. He's gonna go straight up to 77 workers or so. Another Archon there falls on that right-hand side of the map too. Raynor absolutely dominating his opponent so far. Going for the Lurker Den, going for the Hydra transition. +1 missile is just about to finish. I don't know if he's really going to be able to do any kind of critical damage here. Storm is not done yet. I think if Raynor was aware of that, he probably would go after the High Templar, but obviously it's hard to smell out these kind of things. Still, now with this base here, mining as well, Raynor is going to sit on 8 gases, and that's really going to allow him to get a stupid amount of Lurkers out. Alright, it's gonna be up mostly right now to Raynor though, if he wants to finish the game early. He could try and risk it for the biscuit. Or he could try and, I guess, go for some run-bys here. Roach is on the right-hand side, trying to prevent that 4th base, whereas the Hydras are moving on the left side of the map instead. Stasis Ward there coming up to try and slow down some of this army. But this will obviously be spotted right now, but this is difficult though. Where are you gonna position your forces? Immortals will come out once more, but that 4th base will already be killed. Hydras in the meantime going to town right here on the left-hand side. Storm, of course, is done. But Raynor's task right now is just to simply try... Ooh, nice. Catching the tail end of those Hydras. But Raynor's task right now is just to simply buy time until he can make himself those Lurkers. And he's already sitting on 1,200 gas. Well, if this is going to be as many Lurkers as I think it is, there we go. It's gonna be very difficult here. He's maxed out. He can't make any more Lurkers. I was gonna say, why did he not spend all of his gas? He's maxed out. He can't. Yeah, this is definitely gonna come right now to... well, there we go. It definitely comes down right now for Drogo to make a move against this kind of play, though. It's very difficult to call this this situation. Well, this is awkward. A gold base has just been acquired, but oh man, the Lurker's on the low ground. I don't see how you're ever gonna fight that if you are Drogo. At the same time, the Roaches and the Lynx made their way across the map. Mass recall will once again be forced. Luckily this time around, Raynor, being the generous man that he is, he decided to kill his opponent's Cybercore just to prevent that that army from being trapped inside of the natural. 4th base once again gets cancelled, and Raynor now secured a gold base. How are you gonna push into this, right? If you're Drogo, he doesn't know about the gold base. He could move on the right-hand side, but then obviously the whole left side here is gonna be very much so undefended. Well, I guess the Stasis Wards are there to slow down the Zerg army some more, but it is very difficult right now for Drogo to move forward. One Stasis Ward there does go off. More Lynx are running forward just to trigger some more of this, and I guess some of these Hydras will find their grave over here, but now... the Lurker army is moving forward, knowing very well that the majority of those Immortals are on the left-hand side. Raynor is essentially doing a soft contain to his opponent, right? Sure, some Hydras here will go down, but the Broodlord transition is coming up already. Raynor is simply moving forward, slowly but surely. And if you get those Lurkers in a powerful spot, it's very difficult to break that. Now, he does need to be careful that he doesn't overextend, though. Storm and Immortals, as well as Archons, can deal with this army here eventually. Great Storm so far, really plowing through so much of that Lurker army. PtitDrogo says, "Get off my lawn!" And, well, he pulled the trigger on the Storm spell, I guess. Making it really difficult there for Raynor to sit around for a little while longer. Well, I think that Drogo means to go for a big aggressive push right now, but I don't know if that's the option. No denying, though, that that was not an engagement that Raynor wanted there to happen. He lost way too much to justify that. Yeah, units lost that. Definitely heavily in favor here of the Protoss player. And this is once again going to be PtitDrogo's moment to shine. There is still one Lurker there underground. It did get picked off. Great Storm once more, but there's not a lot of Storm remaining. The majority of the High Templar there did end up going down. PtitDrogo knows that he's likely on a timer to Broodlords once again. Great Aspire is coming up, but still, no 4th base. Drogo has never really been able to mine here. How many times did that base cancel? I think it got killed like twice, and it probably got cancelled like 4 or 5 times as well. That does mean that the main is running low, the natural is running low, and the third will also be running out of resources within the next couple of minutes. Drogo is now with his back up against the wall. He needs to get another base up. He really needs to get another base up. Now, apparently, before the Great Aspire transition, Raynor does not want to fall into the same trap as he did last time. He made some Overlords, so he's gonna try and, I guess, drop inside of the main base here of Protoss. I like that decision a lot, but still, it seems a little bit risky, right? Once again, we saw how that went in game number 1. If he gives away too much of his army, this game is over. The Digging Claws upgrade coming up right here. So Raynor is going to be able to go for some faster burrow upgrades. Really nicely done. Once again, ooh, almost setting up a sandwich here is Protoss. Lings on the left-hand side. And here are those Overlords inside of the main base. There's nothing available here for Protoss to defend against it. He doesn't know at this point if it's fake or not, but no, they are filled with Hydralisk. And while this is going on, right, the Greater Spire has finished up. Main Nexus of Protoss, it's gone. Lings are now moving here as well. I think they may be headed to, I guess, the natural, or it doesn't really matter all too much. Oh, man, he's threatening on every angle. This is what makes Raynor so scary. He really tries to come in from every single side. Oh my god. Well, that Protoss army is gone. The main base, I mean, it has been cleaned up, kind of, right? Raynor just simply loaded his Hydras back up into the Overlords. And it means that Drogo will definitely go down here in game number 2. That wasn't even close. Now, I hope I'm doing a good job explaining to you why some of these moves are relatively subtle. Like, for example, the delayed Roach Warren in the early game. Raynor built some additional eco, and basically the rest of the game happened off of that. Obviously, he made some great moves before that point in the game as well, right? And obviously, he still did a great job in the mid to late game too. But there's no denying that he built that mid game off of that really greedy early game. I mean, he didn't start the Roach Warren until 5 minutes. Until 5 minutes, he was just stuck on Zerglings and Queens, which, you know, I've died many times as a Zerg player myself to random adept all-ins and all kinds of plays that Protoss players can go for. But Raynor, recognizing that his opponent went for a late wall-off, he got a couple Zerglings into the base, he recognized exactly what it was he was going up against, knew it was a Stargate play, and then he transitioned towards that really late lair, the really late Roach Warren, and it allowed him to get a stupid amount of drones out early on. And that really slowed Drogo down a lot. So I'm curious to see what Drogo is going to go for here. Not sure if he's going to be faced by a loss like that, because if you look at that game very closely, right? Like I've been trying to do so far, it's obvious there's a lot of minor differences that add up in favor of Zerg very quickly. However, if you just casually look at the games, they look very similar, right? Oh, Stargate Opener didn't do quite as well. Archon drops, guess they didn't do quite as well either. But all things considered, the game looked very similar to the first one, except that Raynor this time around responded much better than he did in the first match. We'll see how it goes. Head to guess pool once again here coming up for Raynor. We see a very similar opener here for Drogo as well. Second gas at a normal time here. So it all comes down to whether or not he starts up the Warp Gate upgrade immediately, or if he delays the 50 gas that it costs to start up warp gates in favor of a Stargate instead. I quite like this though. I really like looking at those small little details. A lot of the top level Protoss players and a lot of the top level Zerg players alike, they play extremely similar strategies, but they've all got their small little touch that just makes it a little bit different. And it's kind of cool to see those touches develop over time as well. Maybe we're going to look at these games in a year from now and be like, Raynor starting up his Roach Warren at 5 minutes? That's the standard, right? That's what you usually do, just in case you want to... Anyway. I've seen, for example, Nurchio start up his Roach Warren at 3 minutes and 30 seconds to be extremely safe. And Nurchio is still a top level player as well, you know? So it's kind of interesting. I don't know exactly if they time their Roach Warrens necessarily off of like the in-game clock either, or if it's more like a feeling or maybe a supply count or a drone count or whatever. You know, I just noticed that in comparison to, for example, Nurchio, Raynor got his Roach Warren so much later there. It's just interesting to see those small little details. Once again, by the way, Stargate opener here for Drogo. There's not as much flexibility in the early game builds for Protoss. The subtle differences are relatively minor. For example, for a long time, Protoss players would immediately get Warp Gate upgrades right when the Cybernetics core finished. However, if you see a Stargate opener here from Protoss, these days they will usually start up the Stargate first and then the Warp Gate, which was a small deviation that we saw for a while. But all things considered, Protoss builds, they're less flexible, I guess. They're less flexible. The most flexibility you really get here is whether or not you start up 6, 8, or 4 gateways with the Archon drop follow-up, if that's what he's planning once again. It's not quite as flexible. I think actually Protoss is probably the most build order dependent race in StarCraft. If you're a Protoss player out there and you're struggling, your builds may just not be as great as they can be. Particularly in the Protoss versus Zerg matchup, because every single small nuke that is wrong in your build order can very easily be abused by Zerg. Anyways, Warp Gate is now coming up. We do once again see additional gateways here coming up, as well as that Twilight Council. Robotics facility already done, so really very little build order deviation this time around. Ooh, one drone almost got picked off there by that Warp Prism, or by that Oracle rather, but really no critical losses here whatsoever. By the way, do you guys like it when I talk about these heavy strategic minor differences? Let me know down below in the comment section. I know some people really prefer the much more analytical way of casting games, and I know some people really prefer when I'm just like making action noises over the cool things, like whoa, ooh, the drone died, wow. But since these games are so very standard so far, I have a tendency to start talking about the much more subtle arts of StarCraft. Okay, let me know what your thoughts are. Do you like it when I talk a little bit more nerdy? Are you like Lowko talk nerdy to me? I like it when you do that. I'll talk nerdy to you guys if you want me to. Alright, once again, we see that charge lot upgrade here coming up for Drogo. So he did build up to 6 gateways here. Alright, so this is a small little deviation. Third base will still come up at a relatively normal time. It's just a little bit later. I don't know if Raynor picked up on that. He did decide to once again go for a little bit of a quicker Roach Warren this time around. I think he's going to start up a couple Roaches here as quickly as he realizes. There we go. As soon as he realizes that the Roach Warren is done. Roach speed will be started up. +1 for the missile upgrade here for Zerg will also be started up. Archons once again coming forward, but I think that Drogo recognized as well that his opponent was playing much more greedy in the previous game. So these 6 Zealots can definitely hurt. Gotta be careful though. Queen's on the low ground. Ooh, my god. Ooh, the Prism's so low. He's gotta be careful, man. Losing that Prism, in particular with 2 Archons in it, is essentially game ending. Couple of Zealots right there on the right-hand side of the map. Even though he made those 6 gateways, I wondered if that was a response to Raynor playing so greedy in the first, in the second game, rather. I wonder if that was a response. Regardless, even though the Zealots are not being used offensively, they're still going to be great, of course, at keeping that third Nexus alive. Alright. Now, I kind of feel like this is playing in favor of Raynor, though. Right? This seems to be his sweet spot. His mid-game is phenomenal. One of the things that people always kind of argue about of Raynor's playstyle is his late game. His late game doesn't seem quite as powerful as his mid to early game, but obviously that's one of the things he can work on. His mid game is just so strong. Look at this, right? He always tries this, and it doesn't work every game. It does work sometimes. This is almost crippling damage. This can easily end the game. So far, it's 5 workers only, but there's no denying, right, that this is gonna slow down Protoss so much more. And while this is going on, Zerg is happily transitioning towards a 4th base. Right? The Archons are gonna try and pick off a couple of these units here and there, but there's no denying that these kind of moves hurt a lot. It was actually only 7 probes, so actually props there to PtitDrogo for holding on as well as he did. But still, it's 7 probes that didn't really need to go down. Obviously, Zerg also put in... Oh, I like this a lot. Also, Zerg put in a couple of Zerglings there on the eco. But now with that economy slowing down, right, and Raynor just buying himself like another minute or so of time for those workers to be rebuilt. Well, he's doing some phenomenal micro here actually on these Archons. The Swarm Host transition is in full effect. Swarm Hosts are amazing on this map, because you can go ahead and rain Locust over these crevasses towards the 3rd as well as the 4th base. Still, these rocks need to go down. Looks like Drogo actually helped him a little bit there. It's like, here, let me give you a helping hand. Still though, Archons are really quite good at killing these small clumped up Locusts. So I'm curious to see how this is gonna go. Raynor being very patient. I think they must be spotted right now, right? Has he spotted them? I'm not entirely sure. So this is gonna be Roach Ravager Swarm Host. Well, there we go. Locust will be activated. Let's see how good the Protoss player will be able to defend here. Oh my god, that really hurts. The Locust dealing so much damage. Nice pickup micro there. PtitDrogo is gonna try and push forward, but look at the supply count. 167 supply versus 103. The Roach Ravager Ball is ready to continue dealing damage. One Bile just simply smashes the War Prism into the ground, and Raynor shuts down this push with relative ease. I mean, the supply count is a little inflated, right? You know what happens when you have a Swarm Host, Roach-based army. All of those units are extremely supply heavy. But Raynor is going to match point. That was really nice. That was a really nice transition there by Zerg. I'm a big fan of the Swarm Host, although when you try and just randomly play Swarm Host, it's difficult to pull off. Swarm Hosts seem like this go-to unit because on paper they get some of the most value for the cost of the unit. It's just that they are really difficult to use because after you use your Locust Wave, it's gonna be on cooldown for what seems to be like 2 minutes, okay? And while the Locusts are on cooldown, obviously your army is not really, gonna be nearly as strong. You got that really heavy amount of supply caught up in a bunch of Swarm Hosts, and it can easily be a little bit too much. I personally find myself sitting on like 20 Swarm Hosts, no Locusts, and like 5 Roaches way too many times. And it's just not ideal. It's a difficult thing to balance. I also always feel like pro gamers wait a really long time before they use their Locust. You notice that in the previous game? What Raynor could have done is activated the Locust Wave a little bit earlier, and obviously that would have given him the Locust earlier as well, and maybe get the second wave off a little quicker. But I guess he just takes into account that he's only really gonna have 1 wave to begin with, so he better gets the perfect value right when the Protoss is going through that choke. But that little bit of patience that you need to properly use it is kind of it's very difficult to master, very, very difficult to master indeed. Alrighty. Hatch gas pool once again coming up. Quick nexus here on the low ground for Drogo. Wouldn't be surprised to see a Cybercore, believe it or not. Cybercores are good structures. Now we are currently on Fracture LE, and Fracture LE is an interesting map. I've seen some really long, drawn-out macro games on this map in particular. This map is interesting because it's got relatively small amounts of bases. So there's a main, there's a natural, there's a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. But there's only 12 sets of minerals on this map, which really is not that much in the grand scheme of things. Most maps will have about 2 to 4 more than this one, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but sometimes you can find yourself running out of resources, and it's rather difficult to expand. In particular for Protoss, say you, for example, take this as your 3rd, and you take this as your 4th, right? Having 4 bases is wonderful, but if this 4th base starts running low, you need to expand all the way over here. And holding on to this entire terrain is not an easy thing to do. Usually I find myself struggling quite a bit on this map in the later stages of the game, just because you have to position your army very, very well. Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I guess Drogo once again is gonna go for that Stargate play. I wonder if he's upset at all that the War Prism transition that he's been going for in the second and the third game really did very little. Raynor has just been slamming that one down. While it has the potential of closing out the game, Raynor going for those additional queens just simply positioned them really nicely and made it essentially impossible for even the 6 gateways to be utilized fully. Right? He was forced to use them defensively instead. So I wonder if Drogo is going to be triggered just a little bit just because his War Prism transition, which is meant to usually keep the Zerg player back, right? Really didn't do that at all. Just a couple of queens shooing away at the War Prism. War Prism going down in low HP, and then it's forced to make, I guess, I was going to say the walk of shame, but it's making the fly of shame back to the other side of the map. It's not really what you're looking for if you are a Protoss. You're really trying to keep that War Prism active as long as possible and to really make it deal as much damage as possible as well. Well, it looks like we have a bit of a different strategy. Raynor, being 2-1 ahead in this series, is now going to be able to go for something much more aggressive. Baneling Nest finished up. Zerglings are morphing into Banelings, but oh, Drogo, he recognized that something may have been off. I don't know what he saw. Obviously, he knows that his opponent is on match point, but already a shield battery there is in place. And look at this spreading here as well, right? This is just in case of these Banelings coming forward. Sure, the first adept might fall. Here's the Oracle shutting it down. There is absolutely nothing here happening. Shield battery immediately activated there as well to that Cybernetics core. That was one of the cleanest defense I've ever seen against Baneling all-ins ever. Right? Keep in mind, this is practically an all-inner for Zerg. Look at the worker count. 27 drones. Well, I guess 29 right now. That's very little. Very little indeed. Beautiful defense so far by Drogo. I love the spacing between the units. More adepts are now coming up. A second Oracle is available. Goodbye, Raynor. Not a chance, mate. Not a chance for you to do anything here. Twilight Council will now come up as well. Yeah, that was great. Honestly, that was extremely clean. Twilight Council is now coming up as well. 2 Stalkers taking the place there of those Adepts. They're going to be able to deal a lot of damage as well. I kind of would like Drogo to actually transition right now towards Glaive the Depths, right? Glaive the Depths are always going to be good. Couple more pylons here coming up in a line, as well as 1 shield battery. Near the natural of, or I guess near the natural nexus here of Drogo. Still, these Zerglings are now having a staring contest with Oracles, and it's not really what you want at this point at all. Robotics facility coming up. Charge is coming up. All right, so I assumed he would go for, the Adept play, just because it's a really risky thing to go for Charge Zealots when you know your opponent already has the option to go for Banelings. But still, Banelings aren't necessarily cheap. We will be seeing that +1 melee upgrade right now for Raynor. But Drogo is making himself up to go for a really big push. Right? That's 5 gateways over here. That's 8 gateways in total. He does have that, once again, that Templar Archives coming up. So this is likely going to be an 8-gate charge lot all-in play. And I love this probe. That probe needs to win an Academy Award, man. Did you see that? That probe deserves an Oscar. Because that was 100% an act. He does not plan on making a 3rd base. That was 100% a fake. Look at that. It triggered 6 drones there, actually, for Zerg. Wonderful play. Oracle's now coming in as well. Just making it look as if he's playing Macro. That's not what's happening, though. You don't make 8 gateways and then transition towards a 3rd base. It just does not make sense. There we go. Zerglings will now spot that something is not quite right. More units will be started up immediately. +1 melee should finish up here while the engagement is going on. But this is going to be an Archon Zealot all-in. A beautiful bit of acting there by the probe. Well, you will start up the 3rd Nexus here eventually, but I mean, this is definitely a push that's meant to deal damage. Maybe Drogo doesn't want to go all in with this, and maybe he really did start, or he did want to start up the 3rd base earlier, but I think that this is going to be something he can potentially even close the game with. Obviously, he needs to keep into account that there are still a bunch of these Banelings available. Archons can take like 17 Baneling hits, like that's not even an exaggeration. A couple of Zealots there splitting themselves off, trying to get the value that they can, but this is a really scary army. A really scary army. The Archons now sitting over here as well. I love this. They are ready to take those hits. While the Zealots are going to town on those workers. Beautiful zoning here by Drogo, man. He's really handling this game brilliantly. While the Archons are just being juggled around here, the Zealots are dealing the damage. Well, so far, no critical damage has really been dealt, though. Oracles did decide to come back as well. They're picking up a lot of the queens, and now with the additional 8 zealots being warped in. Yeah. Raynor decides to GG out, and that means we are going to game number 5. Yeah, Drogo definitely is a tricky player to all in. I don't think you really want to all in that man very often, just because he's very good at defending. I think he just sniffed out that something wasn't quite right. I mean, to be fair, Raynor did make like 6 Zerglings or so in the early game every single match. So maybe Drogo just saw there were like 10 of them and he knew that something wasn't quite right and he went for the shield battery. Obviously, that in combination with him being 2-1 ahead obviously gives Raynor a little bit of wiggle room. So maybe Drogo just needed to play safe anyway. But regardless, if you play the same strategies every game, obviously you do become a little predictable. So I would like PtitDrogo to maybe mix it up just a little bit. Because honestly, in the games where he's played macro, he seems to just simply get overwhelmed. With the exception of game number 1, but that was mostly because Raynor made a mistake of his own, right? He really threw away a big chunk of that army. Whereas I feel like in all the games where they went straight up, it was very clearly Raynor who was the superior player. So we'll see how this one is gonna go. It could really go either way, honestly. In the games where Drogo did win, though, it's been a smashing victory. Very, very good. But I kind of would like him to go for something a little bit different than the Stargate into robotics. Even though it may be the grade A build, like the strongest build right now in StarCraft, sometimes it's good to play something just a little bit differently. For example, a lot of players over in Korea, namely SOS, they've been going for a lot more adept play, a lot of glaive adept shenanigans. Even though, obviously, it's hard to copy those builds, because SOS is one of the most creative players on the planet. There's still a lot of cool things you could do. For example, like Archon drops with the Dark Templar play into Adepts. It's pretty cool. You can do a whole lot of cool builds with it. And you can really get a lot of value out of what is technically considered to be an inferior build. But because it's not very common anymore, it's also true that Zerg players don't have as much practice anymore defending against it. I don't know. I like it when there's a little bit more variety. Because I feel like this becomes pretty predictable if you just play the same strategy every single game. Even when it's the strongest on paper currently. It's also obviously the one that Raynor will face more stuff, you know? So he's very practiced at dealing with this. Regardless, I would be surprised if we're going to be seeing anything weird here from Zerg. I wouldn't be surprised if he's just simply going to sit here, play that really, really normal game where he's 1 to 2 matches. He could even go for the really quick Hydra Den once again that he did in game number 1, but all things considered, I would be surprised if this is going to be anything strange. Obviously, whoever wins this game is going to be the winner of the series. You do not want to go down in the final match, right? That's a bad feeling. Now, there's a little bit of a deviation here. Raynor did decide to pull all the workers out of the gas. Minor deviation. May not seem very significant, but it could mean that he's got something planned. Rather than leaving 1 drone in the gas, like he did in the previous games. He's not really mining any gas whatsoever. Not sure if this is a map-specific thing, because right now he's gonna... Mom spaghetti. I guess he said mum, as in moment. Anyway, yeah, I think he's gonna put the drones back into the gas. Interesting. Alright. Now, one thing Raynor has been doing quite a bit as well in ZVP is go for that roach play. Sometimes transition into Hydralisk. But on the surface, he looks calm and ready to drop bomb. No Eminem, Lowko. Get the Eminem out of your head. No, but what I was trying to say. Sometimes he likes to go for the Mutalisk transitions as well. And I'm a big fan of the Muta transitions. I think they're really good. It's just difficult to pull off, obviously. In particular, when you know your opponent has a Phoenix out already. Starting up that play is pretty difficult to pull off. Anyway, once again, very normal build here from Drogo. He did go for a bit of deviation, guys. He didn't go for the Phoenix immediately. This time around, he went for the Oracle first. Which may actually hurt quite a bit here, because the Spore Crawler in the natural is not quite done yet. How many kills did it get in total? Two worker kills? Yeah, not really what you're looking for if you're the Protoss here. Phoenix did come out. It's gonna prevent scouting, but I don't think that there really needs to be a lot of scouting right now. Lair's coming up once again here at about 420 for Raynor. Wouldn't be surprised to see that Roach Warren then once again at like 5 minutes. It feels really late. Honestly. Getting the Roach Warren at like 5 minutes? Okay, this time around he does get it earlier. Alright. I'm curious though, in the first game or in the second game he got it at like 5 minutes, and then in the game after that he got it at like 450. And then I think this one started at like 435 or so. Makes me think he isn't actually starting it off of the in-game clock, but there's like another trigger that makes him start up that Roach Warren. Very curious though. Also curious why he decided to pull the drones out of gas and then just added them back in and still went for a similarly timed lair anyway. What's the reasoning? I guess it might just be practice or something. Maybe they just try and see what happens if you do things just slightly differently. It's curious. Drogo though has been playing a very similar style here. Once again, going for the single shield battery, making this beautiful little tucked away position. I love this. This basically makes it impossible for Zerglings to kill at base. Well, they could, I guess, but it would be too much of an investment to really try and get in there. The Adepts shielded, of course, not just by the shield battery, but also the Prism there can deal, or also the Pylons there can deal a lot of damage to whatever comes to attack. Nice little bit of micro once again, though. This time around, no worker kills really, but it still slowed down this Zerg player quite a bit. I don't think it was quite as good as it was in game number 1, but obviously we did see that third Nexus now already finished. Drogo has got himself a good eco, going for the faster Immortals this time around, so that's pretty helpful as well, in particular against this much more Roach-centric army. Raynor is going to be able to go for a timing attack once the Roach speed upgrade finishes up. But already, I think right around the same time, at least with proper chrono boosts, while the engagement is going on, the Twilight Council should finish up the charge upgrade and also +1 melee right around the same time, which can really hurt quite a bit. Overlord's speed is now coming up here for Zerg as well, so I'm very curious to see what his plan is. Hydra Den once again coming up, so very normal here. 4th hatchery also does get started up. Now, obviously when you take the map layout into account, pushing up this ramp is nearly impossible. You can't really just move up this ramp, right? It's a very difficult thing to do. So normally Zerg is mostly worried about the mid game, because then Protoss takes this low ground expansion, right? And that's something you can actually take. They either take that one or that one over here. And both of those are at least attackable. Right now, this may just be a map deviation. It's very difficult to make that call. Couple of High Templar. Throwing some sparkles right there at Zerglings. Really, High Templar deal like no damage, man. The reason why they've got an attack is literally just so they don't go in front of the whole army. That's the reason why they stay at a bit of a range, you know, when you attack move like that. It just seems so silly. It does very, very little. They used to just wander forward. Still, Roach is actually dealing a pretty nice amount of damage though, right? This is a very small investment here from Raynor. He doesn't even really want to have these Roaches here once they're maxed out. Bit of a gentleman's agreement, apparently, between the Roaches here and some of the other units. At the same time, though, a couple of Zealots made their way towards the back here of the main base of Zerg. We also did see that Oracle still flying around, tagging the army, trying to see whatever he can get. This 5th base of Raynor definitely could get picked off, but Drogo doesn't recognize that it's up just yet. Would have been a nice pickup for him, actually, to be able to put some damage out on the board. Because so far, sure, he's killed 5 workers. But I think units lost-wise, I mean, he's still ahead in that regard as well. He only really lost 4 Zealots, actually. It seems like he lost a lot more than that. Anyway, still, Zerg is mining, right? 80 drones here already. That's a very substantial amount. Raynor once again. Okay, so maybe he's not going to wait until... I kind of like that idea, right? Maybe he's not going to wait until Protoss goes for the 4th base. I guess if you drop over in this area, you can deal a huge amount of damage as well. If then at the same time you swoop your army towards the 3rd. I'm trying to think what he tries to achieve here. Keep in mind, right? There is no Lurker Den to be seen anywhere. So this is very much so a Roach Hydra-centric army, which is strong, but it's not gonna be enough against the mid-game Archon, Immortal, Storm, Sentry, Zealot with... You know, it's gonna be a very strong army from Protoss, and this is a difficult one to defend with just Roach Ravager, as well as a couple of Hydralisks. As a matter of fact, actually, I don't think there's a single Ravager that's really been made in this series so far. Zealots here on the right-hand side, they did end up spotting those units as well. So I don't know if there's really going to be a lot of weapons there. It looks like we will see some. Ooh, looks like a beautiful storm went down there actually by Drogo. He's going to be able to pick off that 4th base with ease, or I guess the 5th base here with ease. 4th base has already been evacuated, or at the very least, where are the drones? Where did all the drones go? I'm not entirely sure. I guess he may have to split them off. At the same time, though, the Roach Hydra drop has arrived inside of the main base of the Protoss. I think a mass recall here should be forced eventually, although it might be possible that Drogo can actually just simply deal with this entire army. Yeah, he's warping in. He's warping in, I guess, in a natural. There we go. But he might just be able to deal with that army just with warp-ins instead. Another base was taken over there as well. Raynor, while he did go for 80 workers earlier, 1 Archon and 1 Adept did not quite make the cut. Eventually, though, oof. Those Overlords will be forced to pick up the units and get on out of there. One of them almost dropping all of its supply into the abyss. I like that push a lot initially for Drogo. He did kill 2 hatcheries. But supply-wise, there's no denying that Zerg is really far ahead, right? That 4th Nexus is critical. If Drogo keeps that 4th Nexus alive, he's gonna be in a decently good spot. But this is what Raynor does best, right? The mid-game is here, boys. 1 Dark Templar will kill these eventually, but the 4th has already fallen. At the same time, the Roach Hydra Bull goes forward and just simply snipes the Nexus. So all of a sudden, right? Protoss is sitting here with his pants down with freaking 2 bases. Roach is happening once again, or hopping once again, inside of those Overlords. A couple of Stalkers will be warped in here as well. Well, these Dark Templar are going to be phenomenal at the base defense, but... yeah, Raynor is just, yeah, he's just outshining his opponent here, man. That was beautiful. I was a little bit hesitant when he just set on this Roach Hydra-based composition. But he's somehow committing enough army to be threatening, but not too much army that he's gonna lose the game. You know what I mean? Like, he went for the 4 Overlord drop, which apparently is just barely enough to still deal critical amounts of damage inside of the main base of your opponent, while not committing so much army that you can't defend against anything anymore. 1 Stalker here. Springing the trap, I suppose, that Raynor was setting there with a massive concave in that area. Still, once again, you see that? Like, he's splitting off a big chunk of the army, but not so big that he doesn't have anything at home anymore to defend against this. Picking up reinforcements left and right, that's 2 Zealots, man. Or two Immortals, man. That's a lot. 1 Dark Templar as well. Well, make that 3. They're not cheap. They're not cheap at all. 20 drones, though, were killed in the process. And there's only actually 63 workers remaining right now for Raynor. This is still a scary army, right? Storms can absolutely change the tide of battle. There's no prism with this. Is there a prism at all? No. Yeah, there is a prism somewhere. It's pretty far out, actually. At the same time, the Roach Hydra Bull once again made it towards that 4th base here of Drogo. Well, that 4th Nexus will definitely end up falling here. 4th hatchery, though, for Raynor also in trouble. And while the drones evacuated on out of there, this is tricky. I think that prism needs to come by. Why is that prism over there? I'm not sure. He really needs a prism to micro this army, but also to reinforce this as much as possible, right? Raynor sitting on a really nice bank, but here comes the Zerg sandwich. Storms are going off everywhere. They are dealing a massive amount of damage. The army of Raynor gets absolutely decimated, but he's got that really big bank, right? And he's going to be able to reinforce it super quickly as well. A lot of Hydras do still live. 1 more storm, I think, remains, and that is gonna be painful. Drogo loses the majority of that army. And while he did once again try to get himself a 3rd base, Zerg is getting a 4th, right? And man, StarCraft, it's a beautiful game. But a lot of fights are just simply decided by economy, right? If you got a big amount of eco to back it up, you can deal a huge amount of damage. And remake your army if you lose it. Right now, that army there, well, I think Raynor probably lost more than his opponent, yeah. He's also been mining a lot more than his opponent, and that just simply hurts. Beautiful game, though, so far. Spire is done. Greatest Spire has been morphed in as well. Hive is here, too. Roach Hydra Bull, once again, moving forward. Keep in mind, right, 1 proper Storm, and these Hydras will pop like flies. Storm deals enough damage to kill most of these Hydras in one ability. But I think that little bit of posturing there with the Hydra-based army, though, was maybe enough to keep Drogo at home and for these Brute Lords to come out. Raynor has been attempting this in every single game so far, and he finally got it. Ooh, prism! Oh, that hurts, man. That's one of the few ways you can keep pressure there on Zerg. Zerging run-bys once again happening as well, and I think that Drogo now wants to go for that all-out assault. Something similar is what he has in mind right now as he did in game number 1. Although the difference is, this time around, there's still a Roach Hydra Bull here near the Zerg's bases, and the Brute Lords are out. Now, I do count a couple of Archons and a whole lot of Storm here to be able to deal some damage, but the Brutes, they are gonna hurt desperately. Raynor doesn't care about that base. He doesn't care about it. He just cancels that one. One Archon gets picked off immediately. Couple of Zealots trying to go for the run by here as well, but these are fights that Zerg will take any day of the week. Brute Lords throwing Brutelings at High Templar, picking off whatever they can. And whenever you're being chased by Brute Lords, you know that not only is your army very slow, you're gonna be in a world of trouble. Another War Prism there comes out. Zerg once again setting up a sandwich. I feel like that's the name of the game in the series so far, man. Raynor's army positioning is phenomenal. The way he splits off his units is honestly really impressive. Drogo decides to GG out. And Raynor, once again, gets an additional point in my book of Raynor fandom. That was awesome. That was really well played. Honestly, that showed his skill level. And even though Drogo, right? Drogo is a 7k MMR player on Europe, guys. He's a top-of-the-line Protoss. Yeah, even though that's the case, Raynor just made it look as if he is a bit better. And you know, I don't know, it wasn't really that close, right? In the games where Drogo won, he looked very dominant, but I felt like that was mostly due to mistakes from Raynor. I mean, Raynor going for the Baneling bust, a little bit cheeky, didn't work out, he lost the game. Okay, first game, obviously, he went for a really big run by, he sniped through Nexi, right? He lost too much army, Drogo just simply boxed everything together and then moved across the map and won, right? But those are mistakes that Raynor could easily fix. Those are just simply, maybe not necessarily experience things that you need to work on. If you just play the game a lot, you're gonna get better at that. But I feel like those are just simply feeling-based situations where you kind of have to make the correct call just by being in that position 1,000 times before, right? I don't think he's gonna make those mistakes, say, a year from now. And that's what makes him so strong and what makes him so scary. The games where he loses, it's easy to come up with a reason as to why you lost and one reason and one decision that maybe cost him the game. Whereas in the games he's won, like for example this last one, man, that was essentially control from start to finish. Really impressive. He's only 16, guys. Did I already mention that? He's only 16. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. A special shout out to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for allowing me to do what I do for a living. I absolutely adore it. I'm a big fan of making content, man. It's the best job in the world. So thank you for making that possible. And for now, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile alright. And I will see you once again in the next one.